Dennis O'Rourke.
Mr Speaker, New Zealand First will support this bill to the Select Committee. Statistics show that drink driving in New Zealand is still a very serious problem. 61 deaths between 2009 and 2012, plus over 1,000 injuries are far too many. The Minister, it seems, has been dragged kicking and screaming to take action on this, and this bill represents minimal action and far too late. Too little to tackle a major cause behind a majority of road accident deaths and serious injuries, and of long-term emotional or psychological trauma to many more people and their families. New Zealand First supports the overall thrust of the bill to lower the allowable alcohol content from 80 to 50 milligrams per 100 millilitres of blood when driving, and to reduce the current breath alcohol limit from 400 micrograms of alcohol per litre of breath to 250 micrograms. Disobedience of these new limits are to be infringement offences only in the bill, on the grounds that they are in the less serious range of offending. The existing limits are therefore to be regarded in the more serious range and are criminal offences with much larger penalties. The lowering of these limits, however, is justified and is necessary because there's much evidence and research already available which shows enough driver impairment between the proposed limits and the existing limits to warrant this action. Now, the recent Campbell Live program, though not a scientific study, was nevertheless a convincing demonstration of how our limits are far too high, and that most people drinking far less than these limits are in fact not capable of driving safely and are likely to harm themselves and others if they do so. The program showed that while people with higher body mass may be able to drink and drive up to close to an 80 milligram blood alcohol limit without significant impairment, a large proportion of the population with less body mass, and especially women, and more especially young people, cannot do so safely. Therefore, it is clear to me that New Zealand's alcohol limits in relation to driving are far too high and are out of touch with international best practice, and indeed are out of touch with public opinion. The part of the Campbell Live demonstration, however, which impressed me most was the realisation that the main value of a significantly lower BAC limit is the fact that it is highly likely to mean that drinkers will start to make decisions about how much they will drink and whether they will drink and drive much earlier in their drinking sessions. And therefore, they are likely to make much better decisions. And further, people are much more likely to make alternative transport arrangements if they go to functions or for socialising when they know that they will be drinking more than the 2 to 4 standard drinks that would take them over a new lower BAC limit as proposed in this bill. The government has announced its proposed solution to make the infringement of the new rules prohibiting driving with a BAC limit between 50 and 80 milligrams and a breath alcohol limit between 250 and 400 micrograms not a criminal offence incurring the full force of the law, as for driving with a BACA limit of over 80 micrograms of breath alcohol or over 400 micrograms, and instead providing only for a small fine of $200 and 50 demerit points. Now, demerit points may lead to loss of licence to drive for a period, but the $200 fine is nothing more than derisory and is clearly an inadequate deterrent. Demerit points are often easily disregarded, especially by the young, because they usually don't have an immediate effect, and the $200 is simply not enough. These new penalties therefore do not reflect the seriousness of the offences, they undermine the seriousness of the offences, and they smack of the proverbial slap on the wrist with a wet bus ticket. Young people especially likely to think that they might drink over the new limits without being too worried about the penalty, almost in fact an invitation to drink to the criminal limit. They are unlikely to have the result desired of getting people to make their drinking and driving decisions earlier in their drinking sessions. And, Mr Speaker, that should be a primary objective. The government has yet again showed the same weakness on alcohol issues as it showed recently with the reforms, so-called, for the sale of alcohol in New Zealand, which did not reduce the purchase age for alcohol, and which took a wimpy approach to opening hours, and which took no action on issues such as those relating to alco-pops. Clearly, the government yielded then to the alcohol industry lobby on that legislation, and this bill, it seems to me, adopts a similar half-pie approach as far as penalties go. It seems to me that the public of New Zealand actually do want stronger action and leadership on this important law and order issue than this government is apparently prepared to take. And it's an issue which the public need to give us in this House some guidance on as to how far they want the new rules or legislation to go. For that reason, there needs to be a chance for the public to have their say, and we in New Zealand First want to hear those submissions at the Select Committee. And we want to hear what the experts have to say too, because there's been a lot of research and a lot of evidence gathered, and they can offer a lot. We want the new limits and penalties to reflect public opinion, but we also want the optimum degree of public consensus possible. Because in the end, what we really need is a culture change towards more sensible drinking habits, especially among young people, so that success in achieving the road safety objective will become more from improved attitudes and practices than from the fear of high penalties. But that, Mr Speaker, does not mean that penalties should be soft. They must reinforce and underpin the process for social change and better drinking habits, along, of course, with continued education and promotional efforts. So, Mr Speaker, New Zealand First will support this bill to the Select Committee, especially so that submissions from the public can be heard for the reasons I outlined. However, New Zealand First is likely to be seeking higher penalties, also for the reasons which I have outlined, and we are interested in what the public have to say about that. We suspect that the government's limp-wristed approach on penalties will not be supported, and that the public will show that they want stronger penalties to tackle such a serious problem. So I hope that people will make submissions, they will say what they feel about this, and the experts will give us the benefit of their expertise as well. And mostly, I hope that the government will actually listen to all those people. And if, as I suspect, the increased penalties are what people want, the government will heed that and make the changes necessary. So, Mr Speaker, I look forward to the Select Committee stage for those reasons, and will support it and New Zealand First will support the bill to that stage.
Chris Hockenvold.
Mr Speaker, this bill will make our roads safer while still allowing